Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to my channel, Ask Jimmy Smith. Today, I'm excited to be bringing to you an interview that I did with a really good friend of mine and mentor of mine, whose name is Jim Cockrum. So if anybody out here listening has been in the e-commerce space for any length of time, it would be difficult not to find Jim's name out on the internet, so to speak, for all the different things that he's done. He's got one of the best rated, highly rated Amazon courses that exist in the world. And it's consistently either number one on many different websites or in the top 5 or 10, depending on which website you go to. But actually, my course is within his course. So my Replans course on how to do replenishable products with arbitrage is in the Proven Amazon course. So if you've ever seen me talk about the Proven Amazon course, that is a course that Jim Cockrum heads and he owns and is a part of, right? And so I was really excited and to be able to do this interview with him. And I actually did it for his podcast, Silent Sales Machine Radio, which I'll link that below for anybody that's interested in checking out Jim's podcast. I believe there's over 400 episodes as of the time of this recording, which is just insane to think about how many episodes of a podcast that is, all on pretty much on e-commerce strategies. There's other things. They'll go into biblical business topics and some offline strategies as well at times, but it mainly focuses on e-commerce strategies and success stories. As you've heard me talk about, there's over 1,000 success stories with the Replans content that I've put out, the course and the book, which you can see over 500 of them at AskJimmySmith.com/success. You can also see and hear many of them on Jim Cockrum's podcast, Silent Sales Machine Radio. I've actually done some guest podcast episodes with him there, but this was an idea that I had because I've seen questions in the free Facebook group, the My Silent Team Facebook group, which again, I'll link below that, below this video for you there. I've seen a lot of questions asking Jim about his background and does he actually still sell e-commerce and what does he like to do? What's the future of e-commerce? All these things that I figured, hey, Jim, you've never done an episode of your Silent Sales Machine Radio podcast about yourself and your background in an extensive way where somebody's interviewing you. And while you may have sprinkled some things in here or there, there hasn't been one where you've been interviewed. And so I thought it would be fun to do that. And what you are getting on YouTube, depending on when you see this, if you're seeing it right when it comes out, you're getting the exclusive pre-look at this interview. So this will be coming out on Silent Sales Machine Radio in the future. I'm not sure exactly when, but because this is my YouTube channel and Jim gave me permission to put it out here earlier, I'm really excited to be able to do that. So you can get to know who Jim Cockrum is. You can get to see why I have partnered with him and all the different amazing benefits there are being a part of his community, which has many free components like the podcast, like the Facebook group, and has one of the best courses out there with it, which is the Proven Amazon course. And again, I'll link that below as well for you. So thank you so much for taking the time. I ask that you would like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. If the button below is red, that means you haven't subscribed. We recently crossed 1,000 subscribers, again, depending on when you see this. And so I've been really excited to see that and continue to see the growth. So please subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. And if there are any questions or anything that comes up during this video with Jim, please let me know. Please post them in the comment section so that I can answer them, or I can bring the questions to Jim and have him answer them specifically. So it's a really fun episode to be able to do this and just super privileged. So thank you so much again for being here and watching this. I hope that you enjoy it and I know you will. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and a blessed rest of your week. Hey, Jim, thanks so much for being on an episode of Silent Sales Machine Radio podcast. Excited to have you on and for me to get to interview you on this special episode.
Yeah, longtime listener. I'm a big fan of the show.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm sure this is kind of a weird situation for you to a certain extent, but to kind of be on the other side of the mic with this episode. But I'm excited to get in. Really, the idea behind it was I've seen questions in Facebook groups and stuff about your background and really about your e-commerce business. And I thought, you know what, it'd be a cool episode to get on here and just ask you questions, have one dedicated episode where you've probably talked about some of these things in the past on separate episodes, but let's actually have one episode talking about you and kind of the background, the history, and the future of what you see e-commerce and business being. So I'm excited for it.
I am too, man. Yeah, it's a great idea. I never would have thought of it necessarily on my own. I feel like people hear from me plenty, but you saw the need for it. And we have had some questions in the group from time to time, and we've always got new people listening. So yeah, let's dive in, see if I can provide some value, man.
All right. Awesome. Well, yeah, the first question I wanted to ask is just, can you give us a little bit of a background of just your background prior to e-commerce and how you got into it, and really that process? I know it's been 20-ish years, right, since you got into e-commerce. So just give us a background of where you started beforehand, and then just how you kind of got into this.
Yeah, coming up on 20 years, I believe November will be the 20-year anniversary of me. The last time I had a real job, family of 7, married my wife in 1994, my best friend. We've raised 5 kids, homeschooled the entire time. Our oldest is now 24. Our youngest is our only daughter. She's 15. Okay. And I've always been entrepreneurial, even when I had real jobs. The last real job I had was selling Microsoft software licensing, which is about the most boring tech you can get yourself into, but it was still kind of tech. And I did well with it, but I made the mistake towards the end of my career. I didn't realize the end was coming as fast as it came, but I was starting to play around on eBay. And again, this is like over 20 years ago when eBay was a new cool thing. And I was making great money with it. And I was telling my boss a little bit about it one day. He's like, what do you sell on eBay? And because this is the director of our territory, the manager of our territory. I'm a sales rep. I'm doing great. I have the whole state of Indiana, all the educational centers. I'm the software guy. And I work for a couple different companies in that niche, but he said, tell me about it. How's it going? I'm like, oh, this is great. It's fun. It's beautiful. I can even see, a couple of years from now or something, maybe a year the soonest, like this could really turn into something. I'm really kind of excited by all of it, to be honest with you. He's like, oh, that's great. And I said, hey, don't worry though. If we ever got to that point, I'd love to train a new sales rep, take our time, transition the territory. Cause I had a significant territory, a lot of relationships and very stable. My wife was, at that point, Andrea was pregnant 7 or 8 months with Zane, who's now 19. And the next day I went into work and they fired me. And the same guy that I had the conversation with, it was so awkward. He's like, yeah, I ran it past my boss who manages the larger region. And he's like, yeah, we can't have somebody talking e-commerce and starting a second business. And no, not here. So I was gone. And I made the decision very quickly, heading home, and Andrea handled it like a trooper. I was kind of young and stupid still. Like now that would just scare me to death. But that guy was like, you know what? I'm determined. My wife's got my back. Good for her. I was so proud of. We lost our insurance. Right. I was like, what do we do for insurance? We're going to have a baby. Number 3 is on the way. And we've gone on since then, and God has just blessed it. It's felt like ministry. The next step has always been obvious. He's surrounded us with great leaders and an incredible community. And it's been a great 20-year journey, man. So that's the background kind of pre-e-commerce.
Yeah. How did you find out about eBay? Like, how did you get into it? Cause I know a lot of people in the community, and myself included, we're searching for side hustles online, and, maybe we stumble on the, Silent Sales Machine radio podcast, or maybe it's a different website or YouTube or something. How did you find out about eBay and get started with selling on there?
I'm not even sure where it first happened. I've just always been kind of kept my ear to the ground of anything entrepreneurial. And I was fascinated by the internet early on. I mean, I remember sitting, the first versions of the internet were services like CompuServe in late 80s, and seeing it on a TV in front of the class. And we were just oohing and ahhing over this screen that popped up and showed the local weather, and you could go to any city you want to. And it was amazing. So I was kind of hooked early on. I was a computer programming geek, and I don't want to bore people with this, but this early on, I've always been fascinated. So I don't know when I first heard about it, but I've always kept my ear to the ground on e-commerce, internet developments. And to this day, I'd like to think, it's a hobby of mine, stay on, what's working well, right? What's next? Because it changes constantly. That's the one rule that you have to get used to. It changes constantly.
Yeah. So I guess, what have you seen change over the years, right? Obviously platforms have changed and whatnot, but what have been some of the changes, to kind of go off what you just said?
Yeah. And to make this as useful as possible for the people who are listening to it, let's predict the future a little bit based on what's happened in the past. The changes I've seen are things that everything's going to get better, faster, cheaper. That's what technology does. It makes things, if it's good, it's going to be better. If it makes things worse, no one's going to adopt it. So it's going to be better. It's going to be faster. It's going to be cheaper. And it's going to be more reliable, and people are going to trust it more. And I think the trust curve is the part that's fascinated me the most. When I started on e-commerce, I would get questions from my eBay customers saying things like, well, I don't know about using a credit card on the internet. I've heard that's kind of scary territory. Like, it's the same sort of stuff we're hearing now. You and I've had some great conversations about Bitcoin. You're like, I don't know about that Bitcoin. Like, can you really actually really buy something? Is that safe to have? Like, it's that same type of vibe of, better, faster, cheaper, more trust. People feel more secure and comfortable with it. And before long, you look over your shoulder and you're like, you mean people used to be nervous to buy things on the internet? Like, yeah, like 20 years ago, people didn't.
Yeah.
So the first time I sold something to someone in another country was a big deal. Now it's just like, yeah, it happens all day, every day. Those of us with e-commerce, Amazon businesses, and ship stuff overseas. It happens all the time. So those are the changes, is just how much the technology has been adapted. And here's the thing too, I want to point out, Jimmy, this fascinates me and we talk about it all the time in our community, but only about somewhere around 7 to 9% of economic activity. Maybe the COVID, I think we bumped up over 10, maybe we're closer to 12% now of all economic activity, retail economic activity in the United States, 12% is online. The rest is still offline. As much as we think this technology has been adapted, the bigger changes are all still coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've seen, like Amazon has started getting more retail stores, right? Or whenever they bought Whole Foods, that was a big move. And obviously they incorporated it into some of their e-commerce stuff, but there's a huge component of offline stuff that is still out there. So it's interesting to see where do you think that it'll go from an e-commerce standpoint? Do you ever think it'll be 50-50, or that e-commerce is going to overtake the regular retail segment? Or what's your thoughts?
Anytime that I'm asked the question that I'm just another dude making a guess,
yeah,
I try to make that evident. I'm just another dude making a guess when I say these things. Yeah. But I think we'll cap out somewhere around 25-30%. People will still want to deal with people they know, like, and trust locally. There's a biblical principle there, seeing people's faces. There's just an extra level of trust and security and comfort and routine. I don't think we're ever going to be, the robots on Wall-E driving us around in our chairs. We're sipping Slurpees and just hitting buttons to get what we need. Like, that world's never coming. We're always going to want to deal with local, have those relationships, be able to get in a car, go and see people we know. Those things aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So I think the internet taps out. It's going to double what it is now. And I think that's probably the cap. But again, I'm just another guy making guesses on that question.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like I said, you can go to the store and try on shoes and buy them that day, walk out with them, versus ordering 5 or 6 different pairs and trying them on and having to return them. There is an element of convenience still with regular retail. So
absolutely. And the experience.
Exactly.
I saw somewhere where there's a generation coming up right now. What is it? The millennials or the Zs?
The Zs.
Zs, but they like shopping malls suddenly again. Like my son, 16 to 19 to 20-year-old, right? They love going to the mall again. Like, there for a while, it was like, they didn't like, now they don't spend a lot of money once they get there, but they love that, connected, getting together, seeing people randomly walking around, seeing faces. It's almost like they're rebelling against the screens that they were kind of raised on.
Right. Which is good. Yeah. It can be too much. We can spend all day in front of our screens, especially as e-commerce sellers. Oh yeah. It's a dangerous thing if you're always in front of the screen. You need to get out in the world sometimes. So
absolutely. And it inherently, we recognize that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what have you seen? We talked about the changes. What have you seen stayed the same over the last 20 years? I mean, what are some of those principles that will continue to carry on, far beyond these, the current times that we're in?
Yeah, this is more comfortable territory, telling me the things that aren't ever going to change, and that's where you and I both rely very heavily on a biblical worldview, where there's certain things that are never going to change,
right.
And you can quickly get into very controversial territory listing them off. But to stay in the friendly zone of my observations here, let's just say relationships, that's never going to change. People want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And to the degree that you're more involved in their life, they're going to know, like, and trust you more. So the Zoom that we're doing right now, that's way better than if this was just an email communication, right? But it's not as good as if we were sitting in the room with the listening audience there with us, interacting, raising their hands, and laughing when you say something funny, and, hey, could you clarify that, Jim, and raising their hand. That is a completely another level of know, liking, and trusting. That's never going to change. So one of the things we've integrated into our community, for example, I encourage people all the time, one of the metrics you need to track, measure, and improve constantly is relationships. If it's been a while since you've talked to somebody, don't just send them an email. or a text, send them, say, hey, let's hop on a Zoom, or better yet, get together face to face, like live events. That's why they're such a huge deal. And it took me a while to get there, but now that I understand that and I'm applying these timeless principles, that's never going to change. And that is there's a reason I mentioned that first. There's a lot of other things that are never going to change, but as a business owner, that's the one you got to pay attention to. It'll literally put more money in your pocket to pay attention to with great specificity and effort. Building relationships, building your network, reaching out to people, having those phone calls. Don't rely on email and impersonal interactions. That's the path to disaster. I've seen it play out over and over again.
Yeah, it's so important to have that time with other people at conferences. It is interesting to see, like, I haven't been in the community before, the Proven Conference existed, but it is interesting to kind of see even the name, Silent Jim. I know you've talked about this before, that you did that because you wanted to be the guy on the internet that didn't interact with people, and it's kind of coming full circle, and you've changed over to how important relationships.
I've had to change the reasons I like the word.
Yeah, exactly.
I still love the word,
but
for different reasons.
Right. And I know a lot of e-commerce sellers they get into it because you can be easily introverted in it, but the most successful ones many times are the ones building the relationships and still working it as a traditional business and relating with other people in different ways too. Even just if you're doing arbitrage, right? You can build relationships with a manager, and if you're doing that, you're going to have a little bit more success than those that ignore those relationships.
I've got two incredible examples as we get into, some specifics. I'd like to share some things maybe on the show today that I haven't talked about before. So people who've maybe followed the podcast, some of the new, let's say, projects that are coming that you're going to hear more about in your future that I haven't really talked about anywhere else, that have to do with, if I didn't have relationships, like face-to-face people I could talk to, these never would have happened. But because we did, it's opening up incredible opportunities potentially for the entire community and all sellers. So when you're ready, those are a couple of great examples I've got.
Yeah. We can talk about them now. That's fine. If you're ready to talk about them, we can get into that.
Well, okay. And I don't know if I've even filled you in on both of these. You may have caught wind of them, but I actually bought, because of a relationship with a gentleman, I'm not going to drop names, no need to go down to those rabbit trails, but it's a guy I go to church with who's very well connected, owns a hardware store, and it's a franchise, and it's it's a co-op. To be part of this franchise, you got to be part of the co-op. You got to buy in, you got to spend a significant amount of money, but then you can buy into the inventory through this massive hardware co-op. So it's the same stuff that you'll see on the shelves at all the major hardware stores, Walmart's hardware section, all the big boys, they're buying from a lot of these same. Well, I'm now able to get in with one of those big boys because I bought franchise rights. Now I'm not going to open a brick and mortar, but I've got that list now. And we're using that list with several of our coaching students I'm working with and getting them plugged in, because there's more there than we can, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of potential replens that we can't ever possibly touch ourselves. So starting to work other people into that list in a methodical way. And ourselves, we've got a virtual assistant that's just finding a bunch of stuff every single day from just that one list that we're able to now buy from. But it's because of the relationship I had, that friend, having conversations, and he was able to cut through some red tape and get us through the process very quickly, because he's succeeded for years, decades with this organization, got us right in. Had I tried to do that on my own, never would have happened.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Those relationships are key. You never know. You could be talking to a store manager that's like, hey, I'm actually the owner and would love to partner with you on some things. Right. You can get some crazy conversations happening.
Yeah. And that's how it started. Yeah. But then it was getting the water was getting too muddy as I would try to order on his, and he's like, some of it goes to you, some of it stays in the store. Like, let's separate this out. And when we started trying to separate it out, their tech department's like, hey, what are you doing? Like, well, we want this guy to be able to place some decent size orders. Like, he needs an account to do that. So that's all the process, but that's all relationship. That's conversations. That's, thinking big, then chipping away at the problem until you have a solution. And another great example, possibly even better, because this is something I think any of us could be doing. And it's a model we're building out. It took us about 7 months to test and figure this out, but we're getting a bunch of free inventory now. Have I talked to you about that yet, Jimmy?
No, not that. I know. Okay. I'd heard about the last situation a little bit.
Yeah. So this is example number 2, relationships. So I'm known locally as the guy who sells stuff online. So when people have stuff they don't know how to sell online, friends at church, organizations, that's what they call me. Like, hey, do you know how to move this? Could you help us? So I'm giving advice all the time. Well, one of those opportunities came up, and it, again, I don't want to give a bunch of specifics and send people down a rabbit trail. So I'm going to keep it kind of general until we come out with, ideally, I think I'm going to have some training that goes along with this. Okay. But the principle is, in any given area, if you've got warehouses with truck docks, there's inventory in there that they don't know what to do with. There's dark, dusty corners of inventory, or there's stuff they're better off donating versus trying to figure out how to flip it and turn it into cash. Just from a pure, your mom's an accountant. She could tell you, like, yeah, a lot of times you're better off just donating the stuff versus going through all the hassle of trying to sell dated inventory or dent, cracked, whatever, that sort of, just donate it. Mm-hmm. So there's an organization that was donating a whole bunch of their stuff to a 501c3 nonprofit in the area. And they said, hey, do you guys want some of it, to this other nonprofit? Not me, but it's an organization my kids are a part of that they, play sports, homeschool sports, that sort of thing. Hey, do you guys want some of this? Well, they didn't know what to do with it. So they called me. We put the pieces together after several months, where now this homeschool sports organization gets a check every month, nice check every single month. And they don't do anything. They just provide free inventory. Not to me, I'm not set up to sell a lot of this stuff, but to another group, a guy who's in our community, loosely attached, but he's in our seller community locally, and he's able to move the stuff quite effectively and efficiently. So it's free money for him. It's free money for the sports organization, the 501c3. So the seller wins, the nonprofit wins, the company with the extra stuff accumulating in the corner they don't know what to do with wins. And it's a simple proposal to them that sets the whole thing up.
That's super cool.
So free inventory, tax write-off, and a check to use for your nonprofit.
Right.
No losers. Stuff that otherwise probably would have gone into a dumpster eventually. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful model. And this stuff is everywhere. The free inventory is everywhere.
Well, and that kind of
the system is learning how to find it, finding a 501c3, getting all the pieces connected. And I know my inbox is going to fill. And just let me tell you right now, when the system's ready, we'll let you know, because it's not quite there yet, but it's coming.
Yeah.
But it's not a relationship example.
Yeah. You want to make sure that that's set up properly too. Because if you just.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We consulted a 501c3 lawyer. I mean, it took 6-7 months for us to set this up, right?
Wow.
It wasn't just like make a couple phone calls. It took some time and energy and making sure we were doing everything right. So if anybody ever got audited, it's all clean, right? And I'm not making anything from the process, right? I'm just the guy that connected the dots and set up this 3-way win for 3 other people. But now that we've done that, there's a model there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it turns business into ministry too. If you're helping out nonprofits even more through the business, that's awesome.
100%.
And it kind of also, the last 2 examples that you gave kind of allude to the fact that another principle that has remained and will remain is that if you're buying something cheaper and selling it for more someplace else, that business model should always be there. And I know that you've discussed this on other episodes. So what are your thoughts on that moving forward? Because I know, as we've heard, eBay's dead for the longest time, then you hear Amazon's dead and arbitrage is dead. So what are your thoughts on just that as a business model moving forward?
Yeah. Thanks for the softball there, man. You could answer this one as eloquently as I could. We've both thought this through many times, but there's only 2 business models that have ever existed. And there's only 2 business models that will ever exist. They were identified very early in Hebrew biblical tradition. And in Hebrew tradition, they recognize them as hand and foot. You got your hand models and you got your foot models. Well, what's that? The palm of your hands, the sole of your feet. Well, you're either making, creating, inventing, shaping, carving, adding value to something, right? Or you're taking it from a place of low perceived or actual value to a place of high perceived or actual value. So you're transporting it from point A to point B, or you're making it with your hand. Those are the 2 business models. You're creating, and that in your hands is considered any kind of like thought, content, music, anything that you create that didn't exist before, you're shaping it into something new. Reflecting God's nature, by the way, in both equally. There's not one that's considered like, that one's a little more superior than to no, they're both very much necessary. The example I always give on the foot model is taking something from point A to point B is an iceberg in the middle of the North Atlantic. It's of no value to anybody right now. If anything, it's getting in the way of the ships, right? So, hey, let's pull that thing to the middle of the Sahara Desert. Now what's it worth? A whole lot. you could do a whole lot with it there. Just by letting it melt, you've changed the entire area. So that's the idea of taking stuff from point A to point B, of increasing the value of something just by moving it. And that's what I think a lot of what we do in this community is. And sometimes people will push back and say, you know, well, when I'm out arbitraging and I'm, let's say there's 10 items on a shelf and I just buy all 10 and like, man, I just don't feel right about it. I would say, look at it through a relationship lens. Okay, no question, you're serving the people who eventually buy it. But if you feel bad about moving it away from the people locally, how could you relationally improve that scenario? Well, you talk to the manager, you say, hey, rather than clear these shelves, which I'd love to clear the shelf because this is valuable to me, but is there any way you could place a larger order for me? Or are you okay? Is there more coming on the truck soon? Conversation, right? Don't assume that you're hurting them or assume that they're going to love you. Have that conversation, let them know, be transparent with your model. So the relationship fixes that. And there will always be value in the arbitrage, moving something from point A to point B. There will always be value there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of situations back whenever I would do a lot of clearance shopping and whatnot, where you'd find a whole bin and you were going to buy it all. And as soon as you started loading up your cart, people would come up and want to know what you're buying. You know, it was interesting.
Yeah, I was
there were
about
times,
to buy one of those.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, you
it's like it's been sitting here for 4 months and nobody cared, but now that I'm here. But you know, it's interesting to think back to the times when I was like, oh no, I'm taking them all, versus whenever I started to realize, hey, you know what? You can have one, take whatever you want. And that's the better way, I believe, to go about it too. We have to keep
the relation. You look at it through a relationship lens.
Yeah.
Have you damaged relationships or have you enhanced relationships?
Right.
If you're damaging relationships, you're not doing it right. That's
Exactly.
the easy lens.
Exactly. So
the difference between gambling and investing.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. It comes down to the value and the relationships and all of that at that point. Because yeah, you can say something's a gamble, but other things within that can be an investment for sure. So even if you're talking about cryptocurrencies, you can either invest with cryptocurrencies or you can gamble with cryptocurrencies.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Is it damaging relationships? And
right.
That's the filter you have to run it through. And only you and God can work that one out. You know, you have to think. I mean, there's some difficult gray lines to walk there, but I feel like we do everything we do here in our business operation with a very high level of integrity, where again, three-way wins. We win, the customer wins, the supplier wins. If we can't come up with an arrangement where everybody's winning, it's a bad deal, and we need to work on it some more.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about kind of the changes that have happened and the things that will always stay the same. What do you think the future of e-commerce and business could be? I know we talked about the percentage, but where do you think this is all going? Because I know that there's constantly questions about certain business models, not being around anymore. How do you think we should all handle the changes moving forward and things we should look out for as e-commerce sellers?
Yeah, anytime I'm asked, again, the prognosticator hat, take it with a grain of salt. I'm just another guy, but I've got 20 years of kind of watching the patterns play out. And I used to get a lot more worked up than I do now when there were changes. Now I see changes as opportunity. A change, you can look at it this way: the word opposition and opportunity overlap. And in Hebrew, even, there's lessons there. There's no such thing as opposition without incredible opportunity. Every single time, if you just look at it through the right lens. Jim Rohn is the one who always said, you can focus on the loss or you can focus on the lesson. I'm not necessarily even talking about focus on the loss. I'm talking about focusing on the change. You can see it as, oh no, Amazon just changed and they're going to do X, they're going to do Y, my competitor's doing this now. There's opportunity there every single time if you just look at it through the right lens. So something we've been fond of saying to our coaching team, and Nathan, who's been with me for 18 years running coaching, we say every single challenge you'll encounter in e-commerce, especially because things move so quickly, every single challenge, if you haven't thought of 12 ways to get over, past, under, through, whatever that challenge is, you haven't thought about it enough yet. You haven't talked to the right people yet, because there's no such thing as a game ending challenge. There just isn't, unless you lose control of your own ability to think and work, right? That's a game ending challenge for you. And as long as you're able to think and connect with the other people in the community and talk it through and consider, some people get freaked out, for example, like, what if Amazon suspends my account? Game over. That's terrible. I don't even want to play with that because that might happen. Well, let's set aside the fact that it almost never happens. Like And when it does, it lasts for a couple of days on those occasions where it does. Let's set that aside for a second. If you know how to find profitable inventory, you're in great shape, man. You know, I mean, look at that list I've got from the hardware opportunity. I'm never going to get through it. And that it changes every month. There's tons of new stuff in there. Like all I did was just kind of dole those leads out to people I trust who are willing to pay a percent for the, like, that's incredible. And that's what we're doing now. There's people paying me, like that's a whole business model. Or the people in our community that just help other help other brands get on Amazon. Mm. Any of us could flip to that tomorrow. And there's all kinds of businesses out there. Just if you go to one of these trade shows, Jimmy, try it sometime. Like walk from booth to booth. These guys that have their own brand, and maybe it's a lady who invented, you go to one of these food shows, like I invented this cookie. It's a gluten-free cookie, my grandma's recipe, and we love it. You just say, how do you guys feel about Amazon? Oh, we hate Amazon. I wish somebody would help us because we just can't figure it out. Like I could for a cut. Those people are everywhere.
Yeah.
Viable business model if you understand the platform. So there's always a way around, a new connection, a new relationship, and suddenly you got a completely different perspective. And I'm preaching to myself. I've had to do this so many times now.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, make that panicked call, you know, like to the leaders, like, what are we going to do? Like, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. Here's another option. And as it turns out, the thing we were afraid of 95% of the time doesn't even happen anyway. We were just preparing for this bad news that's supposedly coming. Like, I can't tell you, Jimmy, I'm ranting a little bit here, but how many times we've heard Amazon's about ready to kill the whole reseller arbitrage market. They're not going to allow X anymore. They're not going to allow Y. I've been hearing that it's all going to die and go away for like 19 years now. Like after a while, the news just doesn't have the same impact because I wake up the next day and it's just gotten bigger. Mm-hmm. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
and I know
going anywhere.
Like you mentioned, I've said this for a while, if everything went away, you've got the knowledge still, right? You know, even if the whole account was gone and you were one of the 0.001% of accounts that don't come back kind of a thing, you could go out tomorrow and like meet with store owners, local retail store owners, and help them set up accounts. Like once you get an Amazon business and you've got some experience on it, you have more experience than a ton of other people and a ton of other businesses that need that help. So
you're absolutely right. And even people in our community, they bring you on board in a heartbeat. Like, hey, whatever those great ASINs are, hook me up, man. Yeah, I'll send you a cut. Let's partner up.
Exactly. So yeah, I guess there is one question I want to make sure that I ask while we've got time to, is I've seen this in the Facebook groups at times where people will say, hey, Jim, like, do you actually still sell on Amazon? Are you only doing the coaching side of things? Right. So what does your e-commerce business look like currently from a platform perspective and just the different models that you have in your business?
Yeah, well, as you set it up, 20 years in, we've sold tens of millions. I don't even know what the total number is of physical products. I used to be Mr. eBay. Right. And that before Amazon existed, sold a bunch of stuff there. Now we sell on Amazon and eBay, and we have all these other business operations going, the books, the coaches, the courses. We're a prep center as well. Okay. So multiple income streams. I live by it, but absolutely, I'm very bullish on Amazon. That's the reason we stay so committed to the Proven Amazon course. And we've got 60 coaches at this point. Wow. But I anticipate having 7 figures in the next 7+ figures in the next year, just on Amazon with just the Replans model, to give you perspective. Am I all in only Amazon 24 hours a day? No, I've got a lot of other things going on, but at our warehouse right now, at any given time, there could be 6 to 8 different people coming, going, doing the work on our business, on our prep clients' businesses. And we're even looking at possibly doing some retail to move some of the bigger items that we have available to us, some walk-in retail. So very diversified, always testing new things, but absolutely toying around with being very confidently on the other side of that 7-figure number a year from now, total volume of sales, right? On Amazon itself. Not there right now. I think we'll hit it this coming year though.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And I know one of my favorite things is whenever you're making posts and stuff in the Facebook group, which you do often, where you just ran out for the day and, for whatever errands you needed to do, and you find Replan ASINs and you post about, the projected sales for those things and give.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at our spreadsheets this morning. There's and I added a new feature to our shoppers list. We need 1,473 items from local store shelves right now. Like those are replens that we need to stock right now and send in. Right. So every day is just more to do than we can possibly get to, is what it feels like. So it's not for a lack of wanting. It's just so many things happening. And I find myself on the phone oftentimes, just a new person will pop into the community and they say, hey, I could really use some help. I just went through a really hard time. And I like to reach out to those people who are really having a rough time. They're in a bad place. As best I can, carve out a whole lot of time for that, because I still love the early days of what I do now. Before we had a team of 100, those early days where I'd get on the phone and spend 2 hours with somebody. I want to leave plenty of time in my life for that as well. Because we see this as ministry. So relationships is how I'm measuring my success. Financially, we're doing extremely well. Multiple streams of very solid income sources that we've grown into. I could focus on just one of them and go all in, but I want to live. If I'm going to teach people multiple income streams, that's how I want to live.
Yeah.
And, leaving plenty of time for flexibility, for family. And I wouldn't have it any other way, but yeah, absolutely. We're still selling, and my kids are very used to getting in the car and it's full of stuff that I went out sourcing the night before. Like, hey, we got to get this to the office, guys.
Right. Right. So at what point do you suggest other people start adding some of those extra streams of income? Because what I love about the Proven Amazon course is that if something did happen, there's tons of training in there, right? So you can pivot, but there's also tons of training that can easily distract people. And because
That's
there's
great.
so much valuable information. So what's your suggestions for people to start adding those streams of income into their business?
You don't ever want to treat it like you're just randomly bouncing from one thing to the other. That whole lack of discipline, constantly distracted by the next shiny thing. You really need to get in, focus, intense focused effort to get it established, get it automated, put someone in charge, do the things that only you can do, so that you've got a system there. Then you hand it off, and you can involve yourself to a degree. Like if I never shop, the shopping still winds up happening. I can add some oomph to that anytime I want to. Same with our coaching program. I don't have to check in on some of our students randomly. System's going to run well if I don't, but I can, and I do. So you want to have systems in place, good people in place, before you step and try to add something else on. So I never suggest for people to start off trying to build multiple income streams. You build one stream, you get it set, you get it established, and then you start looking at things that enhance that opportunity. So all the streams I have going on, and my accountant laughs every year. It's like, we've got income sources from, someone's $100 a month and others are tens of thousands a month, and everything in between, events and, other podcasts I'm appearing on and getting paid. We have advertisers that pay us now. And that's another stream of income with someone else in charge. The number of partners we pay every month, it's dozens and dozens of people that are getting a check every month from what we do around here. But they all have very clean systems behind each one, with very clean metrics and expectations understood. And then it's my job to kind of be here to, fight the little fires that pop up and the little relational conflicts that pop up, managing that. But I didn't set out and say, hey, I'm going to do all 30 of these things. I set them up, one, put a good person in place. And one of the tips I'll give you too is, when you put a good person in place, you have a conversation with them very early on and say, hey, if you ever want to go do something else with your life and move on, I would ask that you let me know as early as possible when you start thinking that way, and that you commit now to training someone else to do what you do before you leave. On a handshake agreement's fine, doesn't have to be in writing. And people will typically honor that. And so now you've got a system that you can step back from and know that even worst case scenarios, the vast majority of worst case scenarios, are fully covered.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it would be a good idea too. I mean, you can, if you're going to do that, you might as well say, if there's any way I can help, let me know. And see, that can even add extra income streams, right? If somebody's got a passion to pursue and you can be their first investor because you believe in that person, there's a potential other income stream there too, if they decided to leave in the future.
Absolutely. Because you've protected the relationship.
Exactly. Exactly. So since I'm, known as the Replans guy, or so to speak, in the community, what is your expectation of how Replans are going now and where we can kind of expect them to go? Again, this is a future thing, but what are your thoughts on the Replans opportunity in April of 2022 moving forward?
Well, I see Replans positioned in a very much a win-win position.
Mm-hmm.
We already had that test, and you and I had a phone call right at the beginning of COVID. And I was like, does this still work?
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to play out these scenarios in our head of does Replan, like, how does this, and every business was asking itself, does our model still work if this thing starts to get crazy? Like, where are the loose edges here? Do we need to shore up? And we were like, I think it will. And you were more confident than I was at that point, even. And you turned out to be very right that it actually was a huge boom for the whole thing. But if things just kind of go business as usual, Replans is great. If things get a little weird in the world, Replans is even better because people are staying home and they want other people. Because really, at the heart of what we're doing, I've grown fond of saying it this way lately, Jimmy, is we're serving underserved ASINs. That's what we do.
Yeah.
As Replan sellers. We're not out finding winning products. We're not inventing new mousetraps. We're not battling and competing with our competitor who's trying to build something better than what we just built. We're saying, okay, there's a lot of eyeballs on this ASIN and there's not enough sellers right now. Mm-hmm. Let's get some of that. That's what we do. So we help keep the shelves stocked at Amazon, which half of all internet transactions any given day, it's on Amazon, and we're helping to keep their shelves stocked.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful business model that's not going anywhere negative anytime soon from any indicators that I can see. If anything, it's getting more and more positive. And I've recorded some episodes lately, inflation almost plays in our favor. We're playing with physical goods. The prices are going up. That's a good way to keep up with inflation. Instead of burying your money in your backyard where it's just basically vanishing, putting it into physical goods where just by sitting there, it's keeping up with inflation. Prices are rising, right? So you're keeping it moving, the velocity of your money. It's easy to find more stuff to buy. Like I said, I've got 1,400 items. If I was in my car right now driving around instead of with you, like I could be finding $20 bills, putting them in the back of my car right now, right? So the opportunity's there. Work it very flexible anytime you want to. I see it as very, very stable. And I see what we're doing and providing. If I didn't believe in this, and I know if you didn't believe in this as the best way for someone to grow a business online, we'd be teaching whatever that other best way is.
Right. It's definitely, I think everyone can understand and see that it's definitely the best way to start your Amazon journey online. There are plenty of other models that you can do and be successful in. But if you're trying to start in some of those more risky models, or you have a lot more money that you have to put out to be successful with it, it's the best way to start and learn. Even if you decide, hey, you know what, I'd rather go consult with other people. You still want to learn the platform and know it before you consult with somebody. Even if you decide to do wholesale, it's better to know Replans and then get those wholesale accounts after that. There's so much as the base of the model.
It's the ultimate foundation, especially contrasted with everything that I've seen come and go over the last 20 years. There's never been a model. One of my favorite things, I've used this 3 or 4 times now. I'm trying to credit Robin, a new coach on our team, her and Brian Olson, her husband, are coaches, and they do a great job. But she said, I present it to my students when we get new students coming in as low, low, high. Every other business opportunity that I've ever seen is high, high, low. Even in e-commerce, high, high, low, meaning high capital required, high risk, high level of new knowledge, very low odds of actual success. That's how business has been done forever. This, however, Replans, specifically the Amazon model that we teach here, the Replans model, is low, low, high, low risk, low learning curve. There's not a whole lot of things going on there that can go wrong once you understand what you're doing. Right. You don't need a lot of money to get started. Very high odds of success, right? So it's low, low, high, which is hard for people to grasp at first, but I love that visual that creates is, it is a great starting point. But I love what you just said too, Jimmy, that there's many directions you can go from here. And we've seen it happen. We've got authors in our community and, people starting all kinds of creative businesses and getting pulled into, 8-figure opportunities with connections they met at their kids' baseball team. This is the foundation of all of it, is being able to recognize opportunity on Amazon.
Absolutely. And a lot of times there might be new sellers that get started and they have those conversations with people and somebody pulls you into an 8-figure opportunity. Well, the beautiful thing is there's tons of information, whether it's in the Proven Amazon course or in my silent team or, anywhere else on the internet where you can learn as you go, right? If you know the basics of Amazon and how things work with e-commerce, you can learn different things as you go. So if you do fall into an opportunity, I highly recommend people don't just turn it down because they don't know that information yet. There's so much available that if you just know the basics, you can start to really learn just in time learning, right? I think you've talked about it in the past, Jim. And I think that that's important for new sellers that might stumble onto opportunities because of this business. So awesome. My last question for you, Jim. What are some of your favorite hobbies? For people that don't know Jim as the person outside of e-commerce, what are some of your favorite hobbies, for us to learn from you?
Yeah, man, I don't know how anybody could possibly see value in that, but I'm going to trust you, man. Okay, here's my hobbies. No, I've been running. When I turned 40, I started running, and here I'm 53. I've been running, 3-5 days a week. I love staying fit, staying in shape. I kind of pride myself in that. That's the joke in our family is like, none of us are ever going to be as fit as dad kind of thing, and I try to stay as young as I can, as fit as I can. And I've run one marathon. I think people who do them all the time are a little crazy. So I'm not that crazy, but I just use it to stay in shape. And I love playing basketball, man. I've played forever. My first word mom tells me was ball. So, and okay. I'm sure I meant basketball. Yeah. So that's my passion, but it takes a little longer to heal up after little injuries here and there. And I'm starting to, deal with reality that I'm not the guy I used to be for sure, but I still love getting out playing basketball and staying in shape enough to where I can do that. And so, mainly my hobbies revolve around, those sorts of things, but, with 5 kids and a great wife, man, there's always something going on around here. And, I don't know if family counts as a hobby, but, we've always got, it's never quiet here. Let's put it that way. There's always something to do, always something going on. So I've just enjoyed this season of raising a family and seeing them all come up, and all the things they're into, I'm into, so that's kind of a hobby too, if that counts. But
yeah, for sure. Well, that's awesome. Well, it's been great getting to talk to you and ask you some of these questions. If maybe there's other questions people have in the community that they'd love you to answer, we could always do another one of these, or maybe there's just a few different questions you can answer in the Facebook groups. But thanks for doing this, Jim. I really appreciate it. I think it'll be a huge benefit to people that want to get to know you a little bit more, at least from your perspective on some of these things. Is there anything else that you'd want to share? I know this is what you do all the time, but anything else you want to share?
The episode, man, I feel like I've talked so much, and I just feel like, okay, does people really want to hear that much about me? It's sometimes it surprises me, but hopefully they found value in it. And what I tried to do is, give lessons that you can apply to your life. My story is not interesting unless it improves your story. So I would encourage everyone listening, if this is your first episode you've ever heard before, man, listen to good 10, 15 other episodes, after this one, came before this one, and just hear some of the great people from this community, because that's what gets me really excited. My story is somewhat interesting to some people, perhaps, and I really hope it provides a lot of value for listeners. But when you hear everyday people who don't know what they're doing, stepping into e-commerce, building incredible businesses, working with people they love, building a team, becoming a part of our community, becoming leaders. It's kind of your story, Jimmy, and just stepping into these leadership spotlight roles. I love just to sit back and see all the moving parts of the landscape of what this team has accomplished. And I want to encourage that. That'd be the last thing I leave people with is pay attention to what this community is doing, the culture we've built, the people, not just me, what I had to say, the people who are doing the work, changing their families' lives, finding financial independence, applying the principles we teach around here. I'm super proud of that. I'd love to show that off to anybody who wants to dig into some other episodes. That's what you're going to find.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know one thing that's really important to you too is biblical business topics and principles. And we've talked about a few of them here, but I know that you did an episode specifically on that. So I didn't ask you a question specifically on it, but that's another important thing, I think, to who you are as a leader.
Of course.
And so
episode 0 goes into that a little bit, my testimony, my walk with Christ, and
perfect.
How what all that has to do with business as well, tying the two together. We 100% see this as ministry. And I think I described that pretty well. And if you want to go listen to that, episode 0 is the first one we ever recorded. I think I edited it at one point just to add some new details, but Yeah, episode 0, kind of help you decide if this podcast is something that's going to be useful to you going forward as well. It's kind of hear from the heart of what the leaders stand for around here, and why we're doing what we do, what our ultimate goal is. And financial security is a beautiful thing, but if it comes at the cost of spiritual compromise, I'm out.
Right.
And we've got a whole team that thinks that way as well. So yeah, go check that out if you want to hear more along those lines, for sure.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, Jim, thank you so much. As always, it's great talking to you. And hopefully people found this valuable. And again, this wasn't Jim's idea. This was my idea. So, it's not like he wanted to get on here and talk about himself for 45 minutes to an hour. But thank you, Jim, for doing this. I appreciate it.
It was really awesome. It's always awesome hanging out with you. And God bless all the listeners as well. Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hey, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of that interview. I know that it was a long one, but there was so much content and so much value in it. I hope that you found value in it, as I did in talking with Jim and learning about his perspectives on where e-commerce is currently, where it started from, and where it's going to continue to go, as well as some other opportunities that are existing out there. If you're interested in anything that we mentioned, all of the links are below in the description of this video. As well, if you'd like to check out my website at AskJimmySmith.com. I've got all the information for any courses or my book or anything else that you might be interested in. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please give it a like, a thumbs up, so to speak, right underneath this video. Comment below, and I ask that you share it and subscribe to the channel. I know I mentioned that at the beginning, but since you made it all the way through, it's been a good 45, 50 minutes since then. I figured I'd remind you again. So thank you so much. Hope you have a great rest of your day and a blessed rest of your week.